Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's indeed an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you. I have such warm memories of Roshni. I was saying to Uncle Faisal, I may not physically visit, but Roshni is etched in my heart. And I'm going to start off a bit unusually, and you'll probably understand that maybe at the end. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Say Allah is the one. He is as-samad. He is the one who is absolute and everlasting. Lam yalid walam yulad. He does not beget, nor is he begotten. Walam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. And if we stay the path, we will see that he is absolutely unique. Nothing that we have ever encountered before. You may wonder, I hope this, whoops. You may wonder why I titled the presentation, The Servant of the Everlasting, Bitcoin and Serendipity. It might feel like the top Kabir, but I wanted to hide something from you. And the thing that I wanted to hide from you was that I wanted to actually call the presentation Abdul Samad, Bitcoin and Serendipity. All right, and Abdul Samad, I think you all know. It's Mr. Nana, right? So the way that I'm going to tell you about Bitcoin is actually to start off with what I would like to call my journey. Roshni and Abdul Samad. I'm going to start off at that point, and then if I don't cover that, I'll tell you a whole lot of stuff around fintech and Bitcoin and so on, and actually it won't make any sense. I've got to tell you the story first. And then lastly, Bilal, you often used to say to me in the class, you must share some reflections and some reactions. So I'm going to do that at the end, but a friend of mine just reminded me during the break that those reflections and reactions are mine. They're my personal journey. You may agree with them, you may not agree with them. So let me start with my journey. I come from a place in Durban called Chatsworth. Some of you may have been there. I won't give you the rundown from the Big Bang and when I was born and so on, but I'd rather tell you that when I was 20 years old, or 21, I was quite frustrated in Durban. And I said to my mom and dad, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to leave. And I'm going to find my way to Egypt, of all places. And so my journey began. And I left to Egypt. I landed in Benoni, because that's where the taxi stops in Johannesburg. And of course, I had no idea what Benoni was, but I sat there on the street. It was a Friday night, and I had no idea what I was going to be doing. And lo and behold, there was a car that passed me by. The person stopped. His wife was sitting in the passenger seat. They opened the window and they said, "We know you." And I said, "No, I highly doubt that." And they said, "No, we know you." My mum was a madrasa teacher, and they used to call her Julie Appa. And they said, "You are Julie Appa's son." And I said, "Oh, you might know me." And they said, "No, we recognize you. We recognize you. You used to come to the madrasa with your mum, and we recognize you. What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm on my way to Egypt, and this is, up." And the guy said to me, "Look, man, where are you going to spend the night?" And I said to him, "No, I don't know." And he said, "All right, come spend the night with us." All right. And so I found myself at his home in Benoni, having a warm meal on a Friday night. And the next morning we got up and he said to me, "So what are your plans? How are you going to get to Egypt? Which countries are you going to pass by?" And I never really thought about that. I thought, well, the next stop most likely is Zimbabwe. And he said, "Do you have any visas?" And, and so on. And then I realized I was in big trouble. I didn't really have too much with me. And then he said, "Look, man, here's what I think you should do. Why don't you just stay for a short while? Earn some money in Johannesburg, and then when you get some money, you can make your way to wherever you need to go." And I thought, look, the guy sounds reasonable. It's not a bad idea. Maybe I should do that. And so on the Saturday and the Sunday, he looked into the paper, and lo and behold, he found an advert in the paper. And he circled it, came back to me, and he said, I think you need to call this person the next day. Okay, it was a public school position for a maths teacher in Roshni State School. All right? And the next afternoon, I called, and I can't remember, I think it was a Mr. Akuji, I can't even remember now. And I spoke to the man, and he said, look, that's fine, you've got a maths degree and so on, great, but do you have a teaching degree? And I said, no, I don't have a teaching degree, sorry. And he said, unfortunately, if we need to take you on board, you need to have a teaching degree. But I tell you what, there's a man sitting across me right now, would you mind talking to him? I said, well, sure, why not? And he put this man on the phone. Anyone can guess who that man was? No, it wasn't Abdul Samad, but good guess. Nice try. There was another man. Solly Ahmed. It was Mr. Ahmed. All right? And picks up the phone. Assalamu alaikum, how are you? And so on. And I listened to the man, and he says, look, do you know where Vereniging is? I hadn't have a clue. And he said, would you mind coming? Just spend 2 days in the school with us. And I said, okay, look, I'll ask this guy that I'm with, and maybe he'll bring me to this place in Vereniging. And so one of those days that passed, this person got into the car with me, and off he drove. And I have to tell you, living in Chatsworth, we get around and everything's in about 5-10 minutes. And he drove, and he drove, and he drove. And I kept thinking, where is this? And as we passed the different places, I kept thinking, oh goodness, this guy's taking me to the farm. I have no doubt about it. I can see sheep, and cows, and donkeys along the way. And as that road rises, as you come past the deer, behold, there was Roshni. That was my first experience of Roshni. I remember those palm trees on the left-hand side, whoever's palm trees those were. And when he turned into Roshni, I was absolutely taken aback by, wow, there's this community in no man's land. But there's this community. And then we pitched, and it was Mr. Ahmed's house, and he took me around. And one of the first people that I met in the masjid, it was around Maghrib Salah, was a guy called Babu Amin Gangat. Okay? And I could not believe how warm he was. He wanted to know where I was from and what I was going to do. And it was fantastic to experience this kind of warmth. And then Mr. Ahmed said, look, you need a place to stay. And I said, well, I'm here. He said, no, I'll find you a place to stay. And I stayed that night with Uncle Zaid. Okay? And it was an incredible moment for me. The kind of warmth, the kind of reception, and so on. And then I got to the school. And I met one of my everlasting friends, Muhammad Ismail, who was a maths teacher and a science teacher, and we just got along. And all the way along that conversation, everyone was saying to me, look, be in mind, you must meet the principal of the school. So I said, oh, no, I met Mr. Ahmed, and they said, no, you must meet the principal of the school. So I said, all right, look, that's fine. And the first day went by, and the second day went by, and about midday, I went back to Muhammad and I said to him, look, I think I'm not going to fit in here. I'm going to continue with my journey, and I don't think this is the place for me to be. I just don't think I'm going to belong, right? And as I made up my mind, I was walking down that passage in the Roshni Islamic School, and I saw this big man coming down the passage. And then he went, and now you're going to realize why I speak like him. He goes, Assalamu alaikum. You must be Arif. And I go, wow, who is it? And I said, you must be Mr. Nana. And he said, yes. Come and have a cup of tea with me. And I said, all right, I'll have a cup of tea with you. And I went into that room, and it changed my life. I sat there listening to him for about 15 minutes. And not once did he say to me, do you have a teaching degree? What can you teach? Have you taught before? You know what he asked me? He said, tell me what you want from life. No one had ever asked me that before. And I said to him, I want to travel and experience the world. I want to meet new people. And then he said to me, well, you've come to a new place. You've never been here before. Why don't you treat it as an experience and stay with us for 2 months? And I said, well, that doesn't sound too bad. Let me stay with you for 2 months. And then he said something that I will never forget. Okay, and that's what shifted my mind. And he said, allow us to show you some kindness. Allow us to show you some kindness. And I sat there and looked into his eyes and I thought, who in heaven's name speaks like this? Allow us to show you some kindness. Okay? And that was my economics, zero interest in economics or politics or anything else. I just wanted to teach maths and physics. Okay? And for those 15 minutes, he used to talk. He used to tell me all kinds of things and tell us all kinds of things, Mr. Ayub and Mr. Ismail and so on. And he would ask, why is 1 rand not equal to $1? And tell me, why does this economy have more money than that economy? And what is money? And he sparked the interest in trying to understand and finance and the system. So I stayed there for about 3 years, listened to him for 15 minutes every day for 1 year, and it kind of sparked an interest. So at the end of the 3rd year, I went back to him and said, I think my time here is up. I've gotten married, it's not too bad a thing, and I've now got a child on the way, and I've got to support them a bit, and I'm going to find myself another job. And he said, no, we will take care of you, don't worry. And I said, no, I'm too proud. I've got to do this for myself. It's just the way I'm wired. And then he said, well, where would you be going? And I said, well, it's a long story, but this friend of mine had an interview at Nedbank. He didn't want the job, and he said to them, I know somebody who talks about banking and finance all the time. Why don't you interview that guy? And that's how I got a job at Nedbank. And Mr. Nana sat there, and he looked at me, and he said, please, let me convince you to stay. And I tried every trick in the book to tell him all kinds of things as to why I need to go. And at one point, he sat there very quietly. He then turned around and he said to me, can you answer one question and only one question? I said, I'll answer it. And he said, do you feel in your heart that you have to do this? And I said to him, yes, I do. And then he said to me, go, you will come back. Okay? And hence my start of the journey in the Roshni Islamic School. And there's Abdul Samad there in the background. Whoops. All right. And my start to banking. So I won't give you the boring breakdown of all the path into banking, but I worked at Nedbank, worked at ABSA, worked at the Payments Association of South Africa, and then got pulled into the Reserve Bank many years later, and started doing some stuff in there, and have the privilege of spending a lot of time with the international community, with the IMF, the World Bank, and what he used to call the big shaitan, the Bank for International Settlements. All right, and that's what I want to talk to you about. So he inspired understanding the banking system, and I've been obsessed with it. I've been obsessed with trying to understand how does the system come together, and why does it work, and why does it not work, and what is the perspective from a Muslim's perspective. And so I found myself into the central bank. I used to head up payment systems for quite a long while, and then I got a bit bored with it, and I said to governors, I don't think I'm a regulator. Ask me to break the rules. I'm better at doing that. So we created something called fintech, all right? And as Raisa captured, fintech means different things to different people. But the first thing I had to do to convince the governors was to tell them that this fintech thing wasn't a fad. It's not a passing phenomenon, okay? So a lot of the people, you hear them talk and they'll say, man, innovation in financial services has been there forever. ATM cards and point-of-sale machines and, savings accounts and internet banking and so on. What's new? And we had to convince them that this is not something that we have seen before. Never in the history of mankind have we seen this type of innovation in financial services. Okay? And the way that we convince them is to separate between the technology and to separate between the new financial services that are beginning to emerge. So I'm just going to give you a feel for it. These are the things that young people will spend a lot of time talking about and thinking about, and us older people look at them wondering what are they talking about. Some of it is called APIs, like when you just, some of you soccer fans and you're Googling whatever you might be Googling, and these tools and techniques in the background bring up information for you. And you wonder, how come? I'm a Liverpool supporter, how come the thing keeps bringing me up Liverpool pages? All right, and it's an account of some of these things that are happening in the background, like artificial intelligence, and biometrics and cloud computing, and the list goes on. These are things that we've never seen before. The last 10 years have brought these technologies to the fore, right? But the financial services that it's impacting are the following, all right? It's new digital payments and electronic and mobile money. So for those of you who travel to China, you'll realize that you don't need cash. You can pay almost anything in using Alipay or WeChat, right? You can just tap your phones wherever you are, whether it's on the substation, okay, and off you go. If you want to do cross-border remittances, you want to send money to Dubai, in the past you go into your bank, you fill in 50 million forms, you tell them where you got the money from, etc. Today you can do it in a few minutes, okay, using some of the cryptocurrencies that are out there, one of them called Ripple. Within a few minutes, it's done. From your mobile phone, sitting at home. I want to pay someone in Pakistan. Okay, here you go, boom, 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 done. All right? Some of the other things are like, in the past, when you needed a loan, you had to go into a bank. And once again, you put your tie on, you put a jacket on, you give them a whole lot of information. Today, you can click, click, click on the internet. How many of you have heard of wonga.com? I'm sure quite a many of you. You can sit clicking on the internet and you can get loans. And they're not provided to you by banks, they're provided by your peers sitting in this room, all right, called peer-to-peer online platforms. In China alone, there are 5,000 of these platforms that have emerged in the last 3 years. Okay, 600 of them have gone belly up in the last 3 months. Okay, then there are, or you can WhatsApp, and the entity in the background is actually telling you, hi, how's it? Do you want to borrow some money? Yeah. You want to make some investments? Sure. What type of stocks would you want to buy? Tesla stocks, okay, Alipay stocks, right? And the machine in the background is beginning to give you some of these suggestions. Then, of course, the one that I want to talk to you about today is what we call private cryptocurrencies. All right, and I'm going to talk quite a bit around what does that mean. So some of you would have heard of the most famous cryptocurrency called Bitcoin, right? And what does that mean? And how is it different from money that you put with Uncle Haroon and the rest of the crew? And how is it different from anything that you keep in a bank account? All right, and I'll talk to you about that one in particular. I won't talk to you too much about peer-to-peer insurance and maybe a little on central bank digital currencies and something called digital identity. Is that okay? Yeah? All right, so just to convince the powers that be that this is not smoke and mirrors, these are the type of companies in South Africa. There's now about 222 of them that are playing in the fintech domain. Okay? Providing financial services different from banks and insurers, okay, all across your mobile devices using the internet. And these are South African companies. Some of you would have heard of them, right? One famous one is called Yoko. It started by a group of youngsters. You want to accept card payments. You have this little black device. You can stick your card in and you can do card payments. Brilliant, right? I'm not going to talk you through maybe that one, but I'm going to get into crypto. So the best way to start to talk about crypto is to go back to Abdul Samad's questions to me. What is money? Right? And if you ask a central banker what is money, they have like a cheat sheet. They take it out and they tell you, this is what money is. They give you 3 characteristics of money, but in describing the 3 characteristics of money, we never say what money is, right? They tell you that money is a store of value. So if you put stuff in money, it can keep its value, right? It's a store of value. It's a way to keep your wealth safe, a store of value, all right? The second one is, and you mentioned it, Raisa, it's a medium of exchange. If I want to pay you for groceries, etc., money serves that function. I can give you the money and you can give me groceries. And the third one is a tricky one, right? It's often what central bankers spend a long time thinking about. It's called money is a unit of account. In other words, when I go to the shop and I want to buy bread, the guy doesn't turn around and say to me, well, give me 2 chickens. He says, give me 3 rand. Okay, so as a unit of account, money signals what the value of something is. Okay, it's 10 rand, it's 3 rand, it's 50 rand, and I can compare different things from it. So that's typically how central bankers think of money. It's a store of value, it's a medium of exchange, and a unit of account. All right? Now I'm going to give you a different definition of money so that we try and understand what's going on with this Bitcoin stuff and so on. So if you think of money, I'm going to give you 4 different types of money, right? 3 of them, or probably 2 of them that you're familiar with, and 2 others that you're probably not familiar with, right? So when you think of money and you use this particular way of thinking about it, and you said, Mohammed, let's be scientific about it. Here's the way of being scientific about it. You think of it as being central bank issued. In other words, it's the reserve bank in a country that issues that particular money. And the second one would be, but it's universally accessible, meaning everyone can get it. All right? But it's not electronic. Central bank issued, universally accessible, but not everyone can get it. All right? What do you think that is? Central bank issued, universally accessible, everyone can get it, okay, but not digital. You normally keep it in your wallet. All right? It's cash, notes and coins. And that's one form of money. But people think it's from the bank. The banks just put it in the ATMs. The money belongs to the Reserve Bank. That's why on it you'll find the governor's signature, and in the past it used to say, I promise to be the bearer on demand. Right? The second form of money, this is a tricky one because it's not universally accessible. Not everybody has it. All right? This one here is digital. It's been digital for almost 20 years. It's central bank issued. It sits on our balance sheet as a liability, but not everyone can get it. And that there is central bank deposits. Okay? Banks, like you put your money in a bank, in a savings account or check account, the banks put their money, okay, with the central bank. And we hold reserves for that, making sure that there's a set amount. If banks collapse, then you can tap into those particular reserves, etc. All right? And that's the second form of money. Only banks have accounts at central banks. Okay? The third one is, it's not central bank issued. It has nothing to do with us. It's electronic and it's universally accessible. Okay? And that's your normal money, savings and check accounts that you hold with banks. All right? But believe it or not, it's not a liability on the central bank. In other words, if a bank goes belly up, all right, you don't have a claim against the central bank. Right? Company goes into liquidation and so on and so on. And then there's a fourth form of money that we're busy working on now as central banks all over the world. All right? It's called central bank digital currencies. In other words, it's like you having physical notes in your wallet, except that it's on a mobile device and that you can move money between each other using e-rands. All right? And those are the four forms of money. Now, how do I bring it to Bitcoin and so on? Now, as central bankers, if I go back one slide, okay, when it looks too simple, then we like to make it more complicated, right? So, to make it more complicated, we put in one more category here, and that's what we call token-based, right? So, you'll see everything else is the same that I talked about, and this one here is token-based. That's still electronic, central bank issued, widely accessible, and this one is token-based, right? So when you think of this particular one, you see that, I'm not going to talk through all of those things in there because we've talked about it. There's one that sits down here, okay, just there, which is token-based, but it's not central bank issued, it's digital, and it's widely accessible there, okay, and that's Bitcoin. All right, so whoever Satoshi Nakamoto was in 2008, 2009, just after the crash, he came up with a short document. It's probably not longer than 15 pages. He posted it on the internet and he said, we are tired of the banking system and the financial system. We think we can create money using tokens. All right? And what Bitcoin actually is just the ability of having money in digital form that you can move to each other in a peer-to-peer network without having anyone else involved. No banks, no central banks, etc. And that's what Bitcoin is. Does that make sense? Yeah? Am I still doing okay, Uncle Arun? I know you said don't keep it too technical, right? So this is stuff that we've now been thinking about as a central bank for quite a while. And I'm not going to talk you through a whole range of initiatives that we're busy thinking about as money shifts to different forms. So some of you would have heard that, as an example, in this space here, Facebook now wants to offer their own token, so that you can use the token to exchange value between each other, called the Libra. All right? And there are a whole host of other people now beginning to talk about that. But that money is going to be separate from the money that you keep in your commercial bank or in a central bank, etc. All right? So let me quickly talk you through then how money comes together. So if that's the form of money, how does it come together in the current system? I'm going to do it pretty quickly because I want to get to the more exciting bits of what do we make of this entire story. So this is me. Whoops, too fast. This is me. I go to a bank. What does the bank do? It takes my physical cash. It then gives me commercial bank money, savings account, and so on. Gives me a card, and I want to then access that particular system. All right? What do I then do? I say, whoops, I'm going too fast again. I want to then buy a house. But you realize that I'm buying a house from someone that holds a bank account with, if this is Arif holding a bank account with Al Baraka Bank, that might be Muhammad Ismail holding his account with Absa Bank. But if I want to pay him, all right, I ask my bank to move money across to that bank. And what you realize is that for them to move money across, right, what we do is we create a central switch where the message goes through, but between this bank and that bank, there's no actual money that's moved. Right? There's actually no money. It's just a message. You could have put that message on a bird with a with a little piece of string attached to it and a paper, okay? And that bank says, I've now given you the home, but I don't have the money. This bank, Al Baraka, owes me that money. And the way that it works in the background is that these two banks, as I captured for you before, hold money with the central bank. And at the end of the day, what we do is we move the money from Al Baraka to Absa Bank. Does that make sense? Right? And that's why we hold reserves, okay, with each commercial bank. Now, what's going to shock you is, if you think about all the money in the economy, right? And I think you were talking earlier about this, put your 300 Rand and your 500 Rand through debit orders. The blue line at the bottom here, okay, is in value. It's about less than 1 trillion, okay, from about 2005 to about 2018. And this blue line at the bottom here represents all the money for all your shopping, when you go to ShopRite Checkers, when you're taking the debit orders, when you're doing salary payments, when you're doing check payments, okay, when you're doing internet payments, all of that represents this little blue line at the bottom. That's unbelievable, okay? It's only 8% of the economy. And you have to ask yourself, what is the brown line at the top? The brown line at the top is all the money that moves between banks for high value payments. And we make sure every day in the economy that that value is always around 92%. Okay? 350 billion Rand churning the GDP around probably 8 to 10 days. All right? And that's why we make sure that only banks have access to the central bank account, because of the size of those funds. Everything else is sitting in the blue line. All right? So that's just to give you a sense of how does money come together in a payment system. These are all the countries that are now beginning to think about new forms of money. All right? So Tunisia is thinking about an e-dinar, Senegal is thinking about something similar, and you would have heard China now talking about a central bank digital currency as well. All right? So the world is shifting. Right? So how do we think about a crypto asset? I think I've kind of given you a feel for what Bitcoin is, right? The definition of it, though, is crypto assets are digital representations of value that is not issued by a central bank, traded, transferred, or stored electronically by natural or legal persons, utility, or for investment purposes. So you can buy Bitcoin from the exchanges like Luno and Kraken and Valor and so on. Okay, and when you got the Bitcoin, you can exchange it between each other. Right? So people often ask then, well, how big is this and how many coins are there? Right? So when you think of Bitcoin, it's only one type of crypto asset. There are now probably around 2,000 of these coins. There's all kinds of coins. You can think of a coin and there's a coin. Right? There's Tether and Ether. There's even, believe it or not, a Jesus coin. All right? There's a whole set of coins that people have come up with. But it's issued over the internet, it's not backed by banks, it's not backed by commercial banks. What is the size of that money in Bitcoin? Okay, that little tiny bubble that you see there is what the size is a few years ago. And it's still pretty much the same. That's the total money in the world economy on the right-hand side, probably now close to 90 trillion. All right? The size of the two things are really tiny. Then the thing that you should know about things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is that its value, if you look here, right? its value fluctuates quite a bit, right? At one stage, sometime in 2018, it reached about $20,000 for one coin. And then boom, it came crashing down, right, to about $5,000. And now, if you're following it carefully, all right, it's sitting at about $7,800. But it fluctuates a lot. So you have to ask yourself, to the question that Abdul Samad was asking, what is money? Okay, and if it's a store of value, do you want to put your money in something which fluctuates a lot? Okay, you could make a lot of money. You could lose a lot of money. I've heard of people that I sat with in different places that I traveled to, taxi drivers saying to me, hey, we've just invested in Bitcoin. We've taken some of our life savings and put it in there. Okay, and that's a very difficult place to be when it comes crashing down. Right? And that's my core message to you. This fat dude on the right-hand side here is the governor of the Big Shaitan, Bank for International Settlements, Augusto Carstens, and he's come out publicly saying a few years ago, this is a Ponzi scheme, it's a bubble, it's going to burst, and it's an environmental disaster. To give you a feel, sometimes to process a transaction in Bitcoin takes, not a transaction, but transactions in Bitcoin takes the electricity consumption of one entire nation. So I say to them, please go do the mining somewhere else, not in South Africa. We already have electricity problems. All right? These are some of the countries, and I'll leave you with the slides, but these are some of the countries that have banned Bitcoin and some of the others, China and India and so on. These are some that are a bit more open to it, like Singapore and Australia and Japan. These are countries that are a little bit more facilitative. They say, hey, we think we like this, like Malta and Switzerland and so on. All right? So I'm going to do a short spiel on where are we in the South African jurisdiction on regulating cryptocurrencies, and then I want to conclude with something far more important. Okay, it's Bilal's reflections and reactions. So where we are is, we pulled a work group together with Treasury and the FIC and the Financial Sector Conduct Authority and SARS. Of course, SARS must be involved, right? And pretty much what we've done is, we've said, we think this crypto thing is not one thing. You can buy and sell it on exchanges. You can buy KFC with it. Some people raise funds, okay, using initial coin offerings. They put white papers out there and people then fund them, right? And you can even do derivatives and funds, which I won't talk too much about. And there's, of course, market support for this, for people who are mining, etc. And we're going to regulate all of this. Our policy paper is going to come out in the next month, and pretty much everyone who participates in these crypto assets will now need to fall under the law. I won't talk you to the detail of it. I think it would be technically boring, right? So, you know, all I want to leave you with when you're thinking of things like crypto assets is please be wary of the risks, right? And I think enough about it, but here are a ton of risks that you could face as a community. Legal risks, governance risks, cybersecurity risks. There was a guy who passed on in Canada. He had a whole string of wallets with him, and the Bitcoin's gone, right? Tax issues, consumer protection issues. When you put your money in, how do you know how fast you'll get your money out? Okay, those are some of the things that we're working on as regulators. All right, I'm going to skip all of that. Then, I'm still okay for time, Uncle Arun? Yeah. Then I want to come to, so here are 5 personal reflections on this journey. Right, so I could have talked to you for a while longer about all the stuff around Bitcoin and fintech and all these interesting. But I thought of Abdul Samad a great deal, and I really do think about him and the community a lot. And here are my 5 personal reflections. Okay, reflection number 1 comes from Surah Baqarah. Okay, and I have come to realize, you know, Raisa was asking me, how do you go from being a maths teacher to all of this stuff? And I've come to realize the following. In one of those verses, Allah Ta'ala reveals and He says, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. That these people, you know the verses better than I do, right? They believe in this book without a shadow of doubt, right? But the thing that they believe in, these mu'minun, they believe in the ghaib, they believe in the unseen, not just things that you can see. Right? And I begin to realize that in my journey, some of the incidents that have happened, like the guy who picked me up on the pavement and pitching at Uncle Zed's house and meeting Mr. Ahmed and meeting Mr. Nana, okay, I don't think I realized at the time that these were not incidents, these were events, unseen, that I could not have understood. Okay? I had no interest in these particular topics. And my own belief, modestly, is that Allah Ta'ala takes us where we need to be, whatever that means, in our own journeys. And to reiterate that, the verse that stuck in my mind was from, I think it's Surah Safat, from here, all right? And here, Allah Ta'ala is talking about Ibrahim alayhi salam and his conversation with his father, and in conversation about the statues and whether the stars were gods and so on. And something struck me about these short verses. And it says, but God has created you and your actions. And God has created you and your handiwork. And I realized, oh my goodness, that's the unseen. That Allah Ta'ala takes us wherever He wants. But He is the creator of me and the actions. All right? And that's the first lesson that I think that I wanted to share with whoever's young, still in school and so on. That if you believe in the unseen, then you are also compelled to believe that whatever actions He has put, it's because He has already willed it. All right? The second one is that then if you do believe in the unseen, right? If you believe in the unseen, then you do believe that there's a difference between the mu'minun and the kafirun. There's a difference between the two. And I think the Hafiz read Surah Hashar when he started this morning. And that's one of the set of verses that I picked out, okay, that there's certainly a difference. And that's probably a lesson that I've now learned the hard way. There's a difference between the mu'minun and the kafirun. And I think the verses are, La yastawi ashabul nari wa ashabul jannah, ashabul jannati humul faizun. Do you not think that there is a difference between the people of the fire and the people of Jannah? The people of Jannah, the people who believe in the unseen, they have reached faizun. They have reached intense happiness. Okay? And why have they reached intense happiness? All right? They've reached intense happiness because they then understand, and Allah Ta'ala continues in the next sets of verses about how if He revealed, as the Hafiz read it, that if He revealed the Quran to a mountain, it would have battled to have contained its message. But because He revealed it to the heart of the mu'minun, it can contain it, right? But to contain it means that you have to believe that all the actions come from Him, right? Then this is inspired by my mother. It's the third lesson, that if I then want to be part of that community, if I desire to be part of the mu'minun, then there are particular things that I have to be very careful of. Okay, and this one is Surah Ma'un. It's the third lesson, and I truly attribute it to my mother. I'm going to read it for you, and I hope I'm not wasting your time. But you're familiar with it. It goes, Ara'ayta allazi yukazibu bid-din. Have you not seen those who deny the last day? And when you think about that question, you think, who is it that would deny the last day? Maybe it's people who don't read their salah and give their zakah and fast and so on. And Allah Ta'ala immediately reveals the secret in the next set of verses, and He says, no, okay, they do not take care of the orphan. They harsh to the orphan. And when they meet the beggar or the wayfarer, they turn their face away. All right? So woo, shame on you, shame on the believers, shame on the worshippers. Okay? They're neglectful of their prayers. And they neglectful because they want to be seen praying. They want to be seen praying. They're neglectful because they want to be seen praying. Okay? And yet they do not take care of their neighbor's needs. Okay? And that struck me. It was inspired by my mother. She used to read the surah to me all the time. But I don't think I understood it, all right, until having met Abdul Samad in this journey. All right? These things then led me to think about what other things could there be that I need to be careful of as a central banker. And boy, oh boy, Abdul Samad's recitation of the verses around usury it's and so on struck a deep chord with me. I'm not going to go to the detail of that one. And then the last one really, oops, I'm going in the wrong direction. The last one really is this verse where Allah Ta'ala reveals that, again, that if you want to will to be mu'minun, all right, in that last verse, if you want to will to be the one who believes in the unseen and to do good actions, then it's because he willed it so. And that's the secret. It's because he willed it so. So those are my 5 lessons, or 5 journeys, right, that I keep thinking about very deeply from my journey into Benoni and all the way up to the big shaitan. And my last set of thoughts for you would be, you mentioned that I sit on the Global Financial Council. These are some of the topics that they're grappling with. And these are serious topics for humankind. Okay, a new financial and monetary system. The one that we have is battling. Okay? And my sense of it is that the mu'minun have a role to play in finding a system that makes it work. They're battling with geopolitics. Okay? They're battling with public goods. They're battling with health and healthcare. And the list goes on. I could read them all out to you. They're battling with mobility, moving people around. Here are another set. Okay? They're battling with governance. They're battling with corruption. They're battling with energy. Right? And if you are a young person sitting in this audience, I would encourage you to look at some of these things and contribute. Okay? And my last thought for you then would be back to the first set of verses, that if we find that path, whatever it might be, okay, in finance and monetary systems and other things that you study, all right, the desire is always to get back to experiencing this Allah that is unique and intense and nothing that we've ever experienced before. These are the thoughts that I wanted to share with you today. I'm happy to take any questions. I shocked you into silence. I hope not. Somebody needs to prompt, Raisa. Don't be shy. You can ask anything except which way the interest rate is going. I can't answer that.
Arif, thanks for that inspiring talk. Regarding Bitcoin, we all looked at it, played with it. In 2010 or earlier, it was as low as $100. Yep. Have people really realized that value in actual money?
Wow, that's a good question. So I have a friend who bought when it was $100. We used to sit together and we were part of trying to understand how the technology works. And he bought for about 10,000 Rand or whatever, and he cashed out at the point where as you can. So there are normally 3 levels that you keep the keys. The one is what they would call hot wallet, and that's a wallet stored with a crypto exchange on the internet. And those are the ones that the hackers try and crack. And they crack it. They find ways of getting to those wallets. The second one is what they would call cold storage, and you can keep the key. It can be on your memory stick, etc. And the third one is what they call deep ice or deep storage, and that one's pretty safe because it's stored in physical safes, etc. But if you lose your key, like your wallet, the money's gone.
Thanks, Arif. Shabir? Oh, there's a question.
Gee.
You mentioned that the banks it's out of the sphere of the banking system. Hello. You mentioned that the Bitcoin is out of the sphere of the banking system, but the bankers themselves, on their private capacity, don't they speculate with their enormous reserves?
That's a tough question. So we have to separate between reserves that the banks would keep, which they cannot tap into on account of keeping it with the central bank, right? So that's a typical reserve that they keep, and no, they can't speculate with that. The only thing that they can do is, in those two blocks that I showed you, they can, this is going to sound technical, when we conduct open market operations, buy, for example, bonds, etc., from the central bank, and that fiddles the reserves, right? But do they use it for speculative purposes, the reserves? The answer is no, right? The answer is no. The question that you may be wanting to ask is, but do banks speculate? Like, do you invest and so on, and in different forms of assets? The answer is yes, depending on their profiles and their risk appetites and so on.
Brother, this all the currencies you mentioned, is this Sharia compliant? Within the Sharia law, are we allowed to trade?
I would think you need to ask the ulama that question. They would be able to answer it for you.
And from your
right.
The world economic problems, my thinking, is because most of the economies are based on Sharia, on interest. That's why America is showing that they're surviving, but in reality, they're in a big debt. Would you say because they're not conducting the economic affairs according to Islamic law, that is causing the problems? We 3.5 billion go to bed without food, haven't got proper housing, sanitation or education. So this whole economic system has collapsed and has not delivered to the people.
So I think on my perspective of Bitcoin, it's my personal perspective, I'll make it into a joke, and I don't mean to diminish the question that was asked. So I have a friend who says to me, what's the stupidest thing you could do? And the answer is, put all your money in Bitcoin. And the question that he then asks is, what's the second stupidest thing you could do? And it's at least not put some. So my perspective on it is, you must be careful. You must understand the risks that these crypto assets come with, all right? And that at this stage, the risk is yours, right? If you put money in there and the price decreases significantly, you're going to lose that value, right? On the second question on the world economy and how it functions and so on, I can tell you that even central banks, including, the Bank for International Settlements, they battle to understand the place that we're in right now. Negative interest rates, low growth, right? The kind of tools that they've had all these years, they battle to understand whether those tools are going to be able to help the economies forward, right? How much more can you stimulate into the economy? Call it whatever you want to call it, quantitative easing and so on. But we're in a world that I think we've never seen before. And we need, I think to your point, we need to carefully think, again, back to the questions that Abdul Samad would ask. What is money? And what is value? And what is good for society? And I think we need to think about those things. The difficulty, though, is that the systems that get put in place, my own perspective on it is, it's very hard to unwind without instability. Okay, but I'll leave it at that. Yep.
There's two more questions.
Yeah.
One here and
Gee, and I think there's a question from...
Arif, you started and you raised the question of what is money. You spoke a lot around it, but we still haven't got the answer. You came close to it when I understood you say it's in the Reserve Bank and it's a note to say that this is a store of value. But before that, it was actually a receipt to guarantee that you've got so much worth of gold.
Right.
So, Bitcoin or gold coin?
Right. and believe it or not, there are cryptos that are now linked to gold, right? There are quite a number of them that link to gold, and you can produce these cryptos based on that stock of gold. So I think, I'm not sure if I need to answer a question or not, but I'm going to bail by using very economic nonsense and say, the way Keynes described it was, money is the most liquid asset. And that's...
Similar presentation in Durban, Johannesburg, and Cape Town that was very well received. I'm also listening to your presentation now, and you keep on learning, or we keep on learning. I think brilliant presentation. Thank you very much. You know, I heard you speaking at the Santon Convention Center once, and I didn't know much about Bitcoin and whatever the case is about, I don't know, 2-3 years ago. On the train from Santon to the airport, went and registered, put 1,000 rands into Luno. I even forgot about it, and while I'm speaking to you now, I went and see what my balance was.
Right.
And it's 1,600.
Right.
But that was more to learn about it than anything else. We've even tried to introduce Bitcoin in our canteen at Al Baraka Bank. And I actually bought burgers using the electronic wallet to go to the lady and put Bitcoin in there and have a look at it. But it was more to understand, not questioning the kind of Sharia issues on it.
Right.
But from my side, will we ever get to a cashless society using digital currency in South Africa compared to some other countries? I'm not sure if there's any countries that has got digital currency totally, but will South Africa ever get there? Thank you.
I think the answer is yes. It's just a matter of time, right? So we produce 125 billion rand in cash every year as the central bank, but it costs us 25 billion to produce that, right? Cash is still king. It still makes up about 55% of all transactions that happen in retail. My own view is I think it'll happen over time, right? How do we know that that might be true? If we look at countries like Sweden, right, you'll find it very difficult to pay with cash in Sweden. They have many different systems. One of them is called Swish, right? You can just use your mobile and pay. And you know, if you look at Sweden, Denmark, you know, the Netherlands, it's becoming more and more apparent that cash is tanking, right? And in the more developed countries, we see that that trend will continue. There are some anomalies, like Germany, right? And the UK. There are some anomalies, but there are other reasons for that, for those anomalies. If we look at a major economy like China and India, right? I think with the advent of Alipay and Tencent and so on, most of the economy is now digital, right? Including being able to pay for goods and services, even rural areas, buying online and so on. Will South Africa get there? It's just a matter of time. What are we busy doing right now? As a central bank, we're beginning to experiment with central bank issued digital currencies. And one of the big things that we're trying to see is whether you can do these transactions in poorer communities just by tapping phones or using USSD or whatever it might be. So it's a matter of time. But what that time is, I can't tell. Okay? My sense is it's not the next decade. 2 decades, possibly, but not the next decade. And I could be wrong. Yeah. Yep, Jazakallah. Thank you very much.